Hello everyone, it's Sophia here, and I'm so glad you're joining me today. I have something really sweet to share, something that just warmed my heart and I knew I had to tell you about it. It's about connection, that quiet magic that happens when you least expect it. You see, I made a new friend at the bus stop. I know, it sounds simple, right? But honestly, it felt like something special. I go to the same bus stop every morning, usually lost in my own thoughts, just waiting. But this morning was different. There was this woman, standing a little bit apart, humming softly. Something about her quiet calmness drew me in. We started chatting about the weather, the bus being late, little everyday things. And you know what? It felt so soothing, so comfortable. The kind of easy conversation that settles over you like a warm blanket on a chilly evening. It turned what is usually a mundane part of my day into something genuinely lovely. It just goes to show you that connection can be found anywhere, even in the most unexpected places. So, let's begin our exciting journey of English improvement together with this heartwarming story. And remember, new videos are released daily, focusing on English speaking and listening skills to help you improve and enjoy your learning journey. Okay, so, you know how sometimes you have these moments that just stick with you? Like, really stick with you? This story is about one of those moments. My first time visiting a national park. Yellowstone. I think I was 16, maybe 17? Definitely still rocking that awkward phase, complete with braces and a serious lack of fashion sense. But hey, at least the scenery was stunning, right? We, meaning my family, the whole chaotic crew. We piled into our minivan. You know the type. The one with crumbs embedded in the upholstery and a permanent faint smell of French fries? Yeah, that one. We drove for what felt like forever. I mean, seriously, forever. Across state lines, through fields that stretched on, past roadside attractions that promised the world's largest ball of twine, which, honestly, I was kinda tempted to see. I was glued to the window, watching the landscape change. It started with familiar, rolling hills, then morphed into something wilder, more rugged. The trees got taller, the air felt crisper, and the anticipation was bubbling inside me like a shaken-up soda. Finally, after days, okay, maybe it was just 2, but it felt like days, we arrived at the park entrance. And that, my friend, was where it all began. I remember the sign, the rustic wood, the bold yellow lettering. Yellowstone National Park. I actually got a little choked up, which, looking back, is probably a bit dramatic, but in that moment, it felt monumental. Like I was stepping into a different world. The first thing that hit me, and I mean hit me, was the smell. This incredible, earthy, sulfurous scent. It was different, not bad, just different. Kind of like nature's perfume, but maybe a little too strong for everyday wear. My dad, ever the comedian, cracked a joke about rotten eggs. My mom shushed him, but I secretly kinda agreed. We drove through the park, and it was like nothing I'd ever seen. Mountains that seemed to touch the sky, forests so dense they looked almost black, and these incredible geothermal features, like, what? The geysers were the first thing I really wanted to see. Old Faithful, obviously. Everyone wants to see Old Faithful. We parked the car and joined this throng of people, all craning their necks, waiting. And then, whoosh, this eruption of hot water, shooting up into the air like a giant watery firework. I swear, my jaw actually dropped. It was so powerful, so primal. I felt this weird mix of awe and, I don't know, respect? For nature, for the earth, for something bigger than myself. But Old Faithful was just the beginning. We explored the park for days. We hiked through forests filled with the scent of pine needles and damp earth. We saw bison grazing in meadows, their massive bodies moving with surprising grace. Elk, with their majestic antlers, practically posed for us like they were supermodels. And the hot springs. Oh my goodness, the hot springs. Pools of steaming water, in these vibrant shades of blue and green, surrounded by these alien-looking mineral deposits. It felt like being on another planet. One afternoon, we decided to go on a longer hike. Now, I should mention, I wasn't exactly the outdoorsy type back then. I preferred malls to mountains, you know? But something about Yellowstone, it was changing me. I was actually enjoying the hiking. So, we're on this trail, surrounded by trees, and the air is so crisp and clean, and then, bam. We rounded a corner and there it was. This stunning waterfall cascading down a cliff face. The sound of the water crashing against the rocks, the spray misting our faces, the rainbow shimmering in the mist. It was breathtaking. I remember just standing there, completely mesmerized. It was in that moment, I think, that I truly understood the magic of national parks. It wasn't just about the scenery, although that was definitely a huge part of it. It was about the feeling. The feeling of being small and insignificant in the face of something so grand and ancient. The feeling of being connected to something larger than yourself. Of course, not everything went smoothly. There was that time I tripped over a tree root and nearly fell face first into a mud puddle. And the time I got a little too close to a bison. Don't worry, park rangers yelled at me before anything bad happened. And, oh, let's not forget the epic sunburn I acquired on day 2. My nose peeled for weeks. But even those little mishaps, they're part of the story, right? They're what make the memories so vivid. You know, it's funny, when I think back on that trip, it's not just the grand vistas that come to mind. It's the smaller moments, too. The quiet conversations with my family around the campfire. The taste of s'mores cooked over the flames. The sound of crickets chirping in the darkness. It's the feeling of being completely present, completely disconnected from the everyday world. Yellowstone wasn't just my first national park experience, it was an awakening. It opened my eyes to the beauty and wonder of the natural world. It sparked a love for the outdoors that I never knew I had. And it taught me the importance of preserving these precious places, not just for ourselves, but for future generations. Since then, I've been to a bunch of other national parks, and each one has been special in its own way. But Yellowstone holds a special place in my heart. It's where it all began. It's where I realized that sometimes, the most incredible experiences are the ones that happen when you step outside of your comfort zone, when you embrace the unexpected. And when you allow yourself to be awestruck by the sheer magnificence of nature. So, yeah, that's my story. My first time visiting a national park. What about you? Have you ever had an experience that completely changed your perspective? I'd love to hear about it. Okay, so grab a cuppa, settle in, because I have a story for you. A DIY. Disaster turned triumph, you could say. It all started with this photo, right? A gorgeous, sun-drenched shot of me and my crazy terrier, Barnaby, at the beach. His ears were flapping in the wind. I was laughing, pure joy captured in a single frame. I knew it deserved more than just languishing on my phone, or getting lost in the digital abyss. It needed a frame, a beautiful, handmade frame. And then, it hit me. Why buy one when I could make one? I'd seen these gorgeous, rustic driftwood frames online. You know, the kind that scream, beachy chic, and make you think of salty air and sandy toes. So, full of naive enthusiasm and a can-do attitude, I embarked on my DIY adventure. First hurdle? Finding driftwood. Now, I live in a landlocked city, miles from the coast. So, the beach was out. But, there's this little river near my house, more muddy than majestic, but hey, I figured it might have some usable wood. So, picture this. Me, on a crisp Saturday morning, armed with a garbage bag and gloves, looking like some kind of, well, I don't know what I looked like, but it probably wasn't glamorous. The ducks were giving me very judgmental looks, I swear. After about an hour of wading through murky water and avoiding questionable debris, don't even ask, I finally found a few decent-sized pieces. They were damp, covered in mud, and smelled vaguely of river. Not quite the ocean breeze I'd envisioned, but I was committed. So, I lugged my treasures home, feeling rather like a triumphant hunter-gatherer, albeit a slightly muddy one. Next step, cleaning. Oh boy, I scrubbed those pieces of driftwood with a toothbrush, soap, and what felt like gallons of water. My back ached, my fingers were pruned, but slowly, they began to resemble actual driftwood and less like swamp creatures. I left them to dry in the sun, hoping for the best. Now, the crafting part. I'm no carpenter, you know? My toolbox consists of a rusty hammer and a half-bent screwdriver. But I'd watched a couple of YouTube tutorials, and I felt vaguely prepared. I measured the photo, which was already a challenge, let's be honest. Then, I tried to cut the driftwood. Emphasis on tried. My little handsaw was no match for the surprisingly tough wood. It was like trying to saw through concrete with a butter knife. I ended up with jagged edges, uneven lengths, and a whole lot of frustration. Right, I thought, plan B. I rummaged through my overflowing craft box, you know, the one everyone has, full of half-finished projects and random bits and bobs. I found some twine, some seashells I'd collected on my last actual beach trip, years ago, and some tiny, sparkly starfish stickers, don't judge. I figured I could use these to, enhance the frame. You know, camouflage the imperfections. So, I glued the driftwood pieces together, which, let me tell you, was messier than expected. Glue everywhere, on my fingers, in my hair, on Barnaby's nose. He was not impressed. The frame looked, well, it looked like a bunch of sticks haphazardly glued together. Not exactly beachy chic, more like rustic disaster. But I pressed on. I wrapped the twine around the frame, trying to create a, shall we say, artisanal look. I glued on the seashells. One fell off immediately, leaving a blob of glue, and strategically placed the sparkly starfish to hide the worst of the saw marks. It was a masterpiece of improvisation, if I do say so myself. And then, I realized I hadn't figured out how to actually put the photo in the frame. I'd been so focused on the decorating, I'd forgotten the fundamental purpose of a picture frame. I sat there, staring at my creation, feeling a mixture of amusement and despair. Barnaby, bless his cotton socks, nudged my hand with his wet nose, as if to say, "It's okay, Mom. You tried." So, I took a deep breath, and went back to YouTube. Turns out, there's this ingenious thing called cardboard. Who knew? I cut a piece to size, glued the photo to it, and then carefully wedged it into the back of my driftwood monstrosity. It wasn't pretty, but it worked. And you know what? Despite the glue mishaps, the wonky edges, and the slightly questionable smell, I loved it. It wasn't perfect, not even close. But it was mine. It was a testament to my perseverance, my creativity, and my willingness to embrace imperfection. Hanging it on the wall, right next to a perfectly polished, store-bought frame holding another photo, I felt a surge of pride. This DIY frame, this slightly wonky, slightly smelly, completely unique creation, held a story. It wasn't just a frame, it was a memory of a muddy river, a determined crafter, and a very patient dog. It reminded me that sometimes, the most rewarding things are the ones we create ourselves, imperfections and all. So, the next time you see a beautiful, handcrafted item, remember my driftwood saga. And maybe, just maybe, be inspired to try your own DIY adventure. Just, maybe, keep some extra glue on hand. And watch out for the ducks. They're judging. They're always judging. You know what I mean? Learning a new language, especially speaking it, can feel like climbing a mountain, but you know what? It's totally doable and can even be a blast. Think about this. Speak your heart, not your grammar. It's such a powerful idea because it reminds us that connection is key. Sometimes, we get so caught up in perfect grammar that we forget the real magic happens when we just let ourselves express what we truly feel. Even with a few mistakes, your message will shine through, and that's what truly matters. You will not believe how freeing it is to let go of that pressure. And here's a fun little trick to practice speaking more. Narrate a scary story to yourself. Imagine you're walking home at night, or maybe just cooking dinner, and start whispering a spooky tale. It sounds silly, but trust me, it works. It gets you comfortable forming sentences without the pressure of an audience, plus it's a creative outlet that can make even mundane tasks more exciting. Honestly, it felt like magic the first time I tried it. Do you also find yourself understanding what others say in English, but hesitate when it's your turn to speak? It's so common, especially when we're worrying about pronunciation errors. We might overthink every syllable, wondering if we sound right, and that can totally freeze us up. I've been there so many times, and it's totally okay. Remember, Everyone makes mistakes. It's part of the learning process. Thinking about this whole journey, it reminds me of the first time I managed to order food in English without completely panicking. It was a small victory, but it felt huge. And you know what? I want to hear your story too. What's your proudest moment speaking English so far? Sharing these little wins can be so inspiring, and I'm genuinely excited to hear about yours in the comments below. Okay, so, you want to hear about my first trip to the beach? Oh, it's such a vivid memory, even now. I must have been, 5 or 6, maybe? Little me, all skinny legs and pigtails, absolutely buzzing with excitement. We lived pretty far inland, so the ocean? It was practically a mythical creature to me. I'd seen pictures, of course, but, you know how pictures never really capture the thing? The car ride felt like it took forever. My dad was driving, humming along to some old cassette tape, probably Johnny Cash, knowing him, and Mom was in the passenger seat, unfolding and refolding the map like it held the secrets of the universe. I was squished in the back between my older brother, who was engrossed in a comic book, and a mountain of beach paraphernalia. Towels, a giant inflatable whale, the dreams I had about that whale, buckets, spades, snacks, you name it. Every now and then, I'd press my nose against the window, desperate for a glimpse of the sea. And then, I saw it, this vast, shimmering expanse of, blue. Not just any blue, mind you. This was a kaleidoscope of blues, turquoise, cerulean, sapphire, all dancing and shifting under the sunlight. I remember letting out a gasp, a proper, little kid gasp. My brother, without even looking up from his comic, grunted something about being dramatic. But I didn't care, I was mesmerized. When we finally parked and piled out of the car, the first thing that hit me was the smell. Have you ever smelled the ocean for the first time? It's intoxicating. Salty, of course, but also kind of fresh and wild. Like the air itself was alive. And the sound, this constant, rhythmic whooshing, crashing, roaring, it was completely different from anything I'd ever heard. It was both thrilling and a little bit terrifying. My parents were busy unloading the car, but I just stood there, taking it all in. The sand, warm and soft between my toes, the wind whipping through my hair, the cries of the seagulls overhead. It was sensory overload in the best possible way. You know what I mean? Finally, my mom called me over. Come on, slowpoke, she said, laughing. Let's get you in that water. Now, here's where things get interesting. I had seen pictures of people swimming in the ocean, of course, but I had this misconception, let's call it. I thought the waves would be gentle, like little ripples. I imagined myself gracefully wading into the water, like a mermaid in a Disney movie. Yeah, that's not what happened. The first wave that hit me knocked me completely off my feet. I went tumbling head over heels, swallowed a mouthful of salty water, and emerged sputtering and disoriented. I was soaked, sandy, and thoroughly bewildered. For a split second, I genuinely thought I was going to drown. My dad, bless his heart, scooped me up and set me back on my feet, chuckling. Bit of a surprise, he said, wiping the sand off my face. Honestly, I was terrified. I wanted nothing to do with that monstrous, unpredictable body of water. I clung to my dad's leg, refusing to let go. But then, something shifted. My mom, seeing how upset I was, knelt down beside me. She didn't try to force me back into the water. Instead, she started building a sandcastle with me. A proper sandcastle, with turrets and moats and everything. And as we built, she talked to me about the ocean. She explained how the tides worked, how the waves were formed, why the water was salty. She talked about the creatures that lived beneath the surface, the shells that washed ashore, the ships that sailed across the horizon. Slowly, my fear started to fade, replaced by a growing sense of wonder. I realized that the ocean wasn't trying to hurt me. It was just powerful, and beautiful, and mysterious. Eventually, I felt brave enough to dip my toes back in the water. This time, I was prepared. I held my dad's hand tight and braced myself against the waves. And you know what? It wasn't so bad. It was actually fun. I started splashing and giggling, chasing the receding waves and squealing when they crashed around my ankles. The rest of the day was a blur of sun, sand, and salt water. I rode on my dad's shoulders, pretending to be a pirate captain. I built a magnificent, well, in my mind it was magnificent, sandcastle city with my mom. I chased seagulls, much to their annoyance, I'm sure. I even managed to float on that giant inflatable whale, although I was convinced the whole time that a shark was going to come and eat me. Classic kid logic, right? As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink, we packed up our things and headed back to the car. I was exhausted, sunburnt, and covered in sand, but I was also happy. Deeply, profoundly happy. It was the kind of happiness that settles in your bones, the kind you remember long after the sunburn fades. Looking back, that first trip to the beach wasn't just about the ocean. It was about overcoming fear, embracing the unknown, and discovering the magic that exists in the world. It was about family, connection, and the simple joy of being a kid. And you know what? Every time I go to the beach now, even as a grown-up, a little piece of that 5-year-old girl, with her pigtails and her inflatable whale, comes back to life. She remembers the smell of the salt air, the feel of the sand between her toes, the sound of the waves crashing against the shore. And she smiles, because even though so much has changed, the magic of the ocean, the wonder of that first encounter, is still there. Still as powerful, still as beautiful, still as utterly captivating. Okay, so, picture this. It's a Sunday. A glorious, sun-drenched Sunday. The kind where the sky is that impossible shade of blue that makes you question if someone's cranked up the saturation slider on reality. And me? I'm feeling restless. You know that feeling? Like you've got all this pent-up energy but absolutely zero motivation to do anything productive? Yeah, that was me. So, I decided, I said, a walk in the botanical gardens is in order. Seemed like a good idea at the time. Get some fresh air, commune with nature. Maybe even take a few artsy photos for Instagram. The whole shebang. I grab my oversized sunglasses, because, let's be honest, who wants squinty eyes in all those Insta-worthy pics? My trusty reusable water bottle, save the turtles, and head out. The gardens are only about a 20-minute drive, but it felt longer because I got stuck behind this. Oh my goodness, this ancient tractor. I mean, this thing was probably older than my grandma. I swear, I could smell the exhaust fumes from a mile away. Finally, I arrive. The entrance is all grand and impressive, with these huge wrought iron gates and a little ticket booth where this sweet, elderly lady with a smile as warm as the sun beams at me. Enjoy your visit, dear, she says. And I think, I will, kind lady. I absolutely will. Famous last words, right? The first thing that hits me is the smell. It's this intoxicating mix of damp earth, blooming flowers, and something slightly less pleasant. I later discovered it was the fertilizer they were using in the rose garden, but at the time, I was convinced some woodland creature had, shall we say, marked its territory. Glamorous, I know. Anyway, I start wandering. And I mean wandering. No map, no plan, just pure, unadulterated meandering. The paths are winding, shaded by these enormous trees with branches that intertwine like gossiping old ladies. Sunlight dappled through the leaves, creating these little pockets of shimmering light on the ground. Magical, honestly. I stumble upon this little pond, completely surrounded by these giant lily pads. And on those lily pads? Frogs. Tiny, green frogs, just chilling, basking in the sun like they owned the place. I spent a good 10 minutes just watching them, trying to capture the perfect frog on a lily pad picture. Spoiler alert. It didn't happen. My phone camera, bless its heart, just couldn't quite capture the magic. Then, I see this sign, Cactus House. Now, I love a good cactus. They're just so spiky and independent. So, naturally, I head in. Bad idea. It was like stepping onto the surface of the sun. The air was thick and hot, and every surface seemed to be covered in spines just waiting to impale me. You know those cartoons where the character walks through a desert and collapses from dehydration, seeing mirages of water? I felt that, deeply. I practically sprinted out of there, gasping for air like I'd run a marathon. After my near-death desert experience, I decided I needed a break. I found a little bench nestled beneath this enormous willow tree, the kind that drapes its branches all the way to the ground like a green curtain. I sat down, took a swig of water, thank goodness I brought that, and just breathed. The air was cool and damp under the willow, and the gentle rustling of the leaves was incredibly soothing. I closed my eyes for a moment, just enjoying the peace. And then, I heard it, a faint buzzing sound. I opened my eyes and, oh my God, bees everywhere. Turns out, the willow tree was also home to a massive hive. Now, I'm not usually scared of bees, but this was a whole different level. They were buzzing all around me, landing on my shoes, my bag, even my hair. I swear, one even tried to fly up my nose. I did what any rational person would do. I screamed and flailed my arms like a lunatic, running blindly through the gardens until I was sure the beepocalypse was over. Looking back, it was probably quite a sight. Elegant, it was not. Slightly shaken, but thankfully not stung. I decided to stick to the less buzzy areas of the gardens. I wandered through the herb garden, inhaling the scent of rosemary and thyme. I admired the vibrant colors of the flower beds, bursting with reds, yellows, and pinks. I even saw a peacock strutting around like he owned the place, showing off his magnificent feathers. That guy knew his angles, I'll give him that. Eventually, I found myself back near the entrance. The sun was starting to set, painting the sky in these incredible shades of orange and purple. Exhausted, but strangely content, I headed towards the gates. As I was leaving, I noticed a small sign I hadn't seen before. It read, "Beware of bees in Willow Tree area." You know, sometimes I wonder if the universe just enjoys messing with me. So, that was my walk through the botanical gardens. A little chaotic, a little sweaty, a lot of fun. And hey, at least I have a good story to tell, right? You know what I mean? It wasn't exactly the serene, Instagram-worthy experience I had envisioned, but it was an experience nonetheless. And sometimes, those are the best kind. So, next time you're feeling restless, maybe consider a trip to your local botanical gardens. Just, maybe bring some bug spray. Just in case. You've been warned. Hey everyone, learning a language is like planting a tree. Nurture it daily. Think about it. You wouldn't expect a sapling to become a mighty oak overnight, right? It takes consistent care, sunlight, and water. Similarly, with English, every little bit of practice, every conversation, every new word you learn adds to your growth. Keep nurturing your English tree, and you'll be amazed at how strong and tall it becomes. You've got this. And you know what? Here's a fun way to practice speaking. Pretend you're hosting your own radio show. Imagine you're cooking dinner and chatting about your day, or maybe you're out for a walk and describing the scenery. Just talk to yourself, out loud, as if you have an audience listening. It might feel a little silly at first, but it's a fantastic way to get comfortable with forming sentences and expressing yourself in English. Plus, no one's grading you, it's just you and your imaginary listeners. Not knowing how to ask for clarification politely can be so frustrating, right? You understand perfectly what someone is saying, but then when it's your turn to speak, you completely blank. Or perhaps you catch most of the conversation, but miss a crucial detail and feel too shy to ask them to repeat it. Believe me, I get it. It happens to the best of us. Have you ever taught someone else English words or phrases? I remember once, I was helping my little niece learn the names of different colors. It was so rewarding to see her face light up as she started to understand. Sharing what we know can be such a powerful learning experience, both for the teacher and the student. So, tell me in the comments, have you ever had a similar experience? I'd love to hear your stories. Okay, so, you are never going to believe what happened to me yesterday. It all started with an incense stick. Yes, just a little stick of incense. Seems innocuous, right? Oh, how wrong I was. See, I'm a creature of habit. My apartment always smells of vanilla. Always. It's my comfort scent, you know? Like a warm hug in olfactory form. But lately, I've been feeling restless. Like my life needed a little spice. Pun intended, because, well, you'll see. So, I'm at this little bohemian shop downtown. The one with the dream catchers hanging in the window and the faint, ever-present smell of patchouli. You know the one? and I'm browsing the incense. Rows and rows of them, like little fragrant soldiers standing at attention. Sandalwood, lavender, rose, all the usual suspects. But then, tucked away in the corner, almost hiding, I see it. Dragon's Breath. Dragon's Breath. The name alone was an adventure. The packaging was this deep, almost iridescent purple, with a picture of, you guessed it, a dragon breathing what looked suspiciously like glitter. I had to know, what even is dragon's breath incense? Does it smell like burnt toast and regret? Does it transport you to a mythical realm? I grabbed a box. The shopkeeper, a woman with eyes that held the wisdom of 1,000 galaxies, gave me a knowing smile. I should have taken that as a warning. Back home, I'm practically vibrating with anticipation. I light the incense, expecting, I don't know what, fireworks? A choir of angels? The scent of 1,000 blooming lotuses? What I got was, well, it was interesting. The first whiff was like cinnamon, but then there was this undercurrent of something earthy, almost barnyard y, like a cinnamon roll baked in a stable. I wrinkled my nose. I thought, that's different. I decided to give it a chance. Maybe it just needed to bloom. So, I placed the incense holder in my living room, sank into my favorite armchair, and opened my book. Big mistake. 5 minutes in, and the earthy notes had amplified. It wasn't just barnyard anymore, it was full-on petting zoo. I could practically smell the llama fur and the slightly too ripe bananas the monkeys were throwing at each other. Okay, I muttered, maybe the living room is too big. It needs a smaller, more contained space. So, like a fool, I moved the incense holder to my tiny bathroom. Double mistake. Now, my bathroom, bless its heart, is not large. It's the kind of bathroom where you have to do a little wiggle dance to close the door once you're inside. So, you can imagine what happened when I introduced dragon's breath into the equation. It was an olfactory explosion. The cinnamon stable petting zoo scent intensified, swirling around me in a dizzying cloud. I started to feel a little lightheaded. And then, the smoke alarm went off. Yep, apparently, dragon's breath not only smells like a farm animal convention but also produces enough smoke to rival a small bonfire. I flapped my arms around like a demented bird, trying to fan away the smoke, but it was no use. The alarm shrieked relentlessly, piercing the fragrant fog. Suddenly, my cat, Mr. Fluffernutter, who normally sleeps through anything short of an earthquake, shot out from under the bed, looking utterly horrified. He scrambled onto the windowsill, yowling like he'd seen a ghost riding a vacuum cleaner. The whole scene was pure chaos. Me, coughing and waving a towel, Mr. Fluffernutter wailing at the top of his lungs, and the smoke alarm screaming like a banshee. You know those moments in life where you think, how did I get here? This was one of those moments. Finally, I managed to wrestle open the bathroom window, gasping for fresh air like a drowning woman surfacing after a very long time underwater. The smoke alarm, thankfully, subsided. Mr. Fluffernutter, still looking traumatized, cautiously crept back under the bed. I surveyed the scene. The bathroom was hazy, smelling strongly of, well, you know. And me? I smelled like I'd spent the afternoon cuddling with a particularly fragrant goat. So, I learned a few things that day. 1. Never trust incense with a dramatic name. 2. Always test new scents in a well-ventilated area. And 3. Mr. Fluffernutter has a surprisingly low tolerance for unusual smells. But the story doesn't end there. Oh no, the saga of dragon's breath continued. Because, guess what? The smell lingered. For days, my apartment, my sanctuary of vanilla tranquility, was now permanently infused with the faint aroma of cinnamon stable petting zoo. Friends who came over would wrinkle their noses and ask, did you adopt a goat? I'd just laugh weakly and say, it's a new air freshener. Long-lasting, you know? Even after I scrubbed the bathroom from top to bottom, aired out the apartment, and burned approximately 1 million vanilla-scented candles, the faintest whisper of dragon's breath remained. It was like the olfactory equivalent of a stubborn glitter stain. You just couldn't get rid of it. Eventually, I kind of got used to it. It became my new normal. Guests stopped asking about the goat, and Mr. Fluffernutter, bless his little furry heart, seemed to have recovered from his traumatic experience. And you know what? Sometimes, when I'm walking through my apartment and catch a whiff of that faint, lingering scent, I smile. It's a reminder of that chaotic, hilarious afternoon. A reminder that sometimes, stepping outside of your comfort zone, even if it results in a smoke-filled bathroom and a traumatized cat, can be an experience. So, yeah, that's the story of how I tried a new incense stick fragrance and accidentally turned my apartment into a petting zoo. What about you? Any disastrous scent experiments you care to share? I could use a laugh, and maybe some advice on how to finally banish the ghost of dragon's breath from my life. Because, honestly, while I've grown somewhat fond of it, I think I'm ready to go back to vanilla. Just plain, simple, comforting vanilla. You know what I mean? So, you want to hear about how I learned to play the piano? Oh, honey, it's a story. Grab a cuppa, get comfy, because this is gonna take a while. It all started, I guess, with the dust motes. You know how, when sunlight streams through a window, you can see all these tiny little dust motes dancing in the air? Well, our living room window, it faced west, so every late afternoon, this golden light would flood the room, and the dust motes would do this ballet. And right there, bathed in this golden glow, sat my grandmother's piano. It was an upright, a bit battered around the edges, a deep, rich mahogany, the kind that gleamed when you polished it just so. The ivory keys, some slightly yellowed with age, seemed to whisper secrets in that dusty light. I was, maybe, 5 or 6. Tiny. I remember thinking it was magic. The dust motes, the light, the silent piano. It all felt like another world. A world I desperately wanted to be part of. My grandmother, Nana Rose, she was the one who played. Not professionally or anything, but with this quiet joy that just radiated from her. She'd sit down on the worn velvet stool, her fingers, thin and elegant, would hover over the keys for a moment, and then, music. Not complicated stuff, mostly simple melodies, hymns sometimes, or old folk songs. But in that room, with those dancing dust motes, it sounded like the most beautiful thing I'd ever heard. I'd stand by, mesmerized. Sometimes, I'd even try to conduct the dust motes along with the music, imagining they were tiny musicians playing alongside Nana Rose. You know, kid logic. I'd puff out my cheeks and wave my arms, and in my head, it was a masterpiece. Nana Rose would chuckle, this warm, rumbling sound, and sometimes, she'd let me turn the pages of her sheet music, which, to me, felt like being entrusted with a national treasure. So, naturally, I wanted to play too. I'd pester Nana Rose constantly. Teach me, Nana, teach me, I'd plead, tugging on her skirt. She'd smile, this knowing smile, and say, patience, little sparrow. Patience. Finally, when I turned 7, she relented. My first lesson, oh, I remember it so clearly. The smell of her lavender hand cream. The way the sunlight warmed the keys. The slightly musty scent of the old piano felt significant. She showed me middle C, explained the whole concept of scales, do re mi, all that jazz. My little fingers, chubby and clumsy, fumbled over the keys. It sounded, not like Nana Rose. It sounded like a cat tap dancing on a tin roof. Frustration bubbled up. I wanted to make the music she made, the music that made the dust motes dance. But Nana Rose, bless her soul, she was patient. She'd gently correct my finger placement, her hand, cool and smooth on mine, guiding me. She'd explain rhythm, counting out loud, 1 and 2 and 3 and 4. Slowly, painstakingly slowly, I started to get it. The scales became less clunky, the notes less random. I learned chopsticks, naturally. Who doesn't start with chopsticks? Then came hot cross buns. Triumphant moments, those. I felt like Mozart. Okay, maybe a slightly less accomplished Mozart. But you know, learning piano isn't all sunshine and rainbows and perfectly dancing dust motes. There were days I wanted to throw the music book across the room. Days where my fingers just wouldn't cooperate. Days where I swore the piano was deliberately conspiring against me. Scales became my nemesis. Practicing felt like a chore, a punishment. I'd whine, I'd complain, I'd try to negotiate my way out of it. But Nana, it's sunny outside. The dust motes are calling. I'd say, trying to use her own poetic descriptions against her. She wasn't having it. "Practice makes perfect, little sparrow," she'd say, her voice firm but kind. And so, I practiced. Sometimes through gritted teeth, sometimes with tears welling up, sometimes with a surprising burst of joy when a passage finally clicked. And slowly, magically almost, the music started to flow. I learned new pieces, tackled harder melodies. I moved beyond chopsticks and hot cross buns. Thank goodness. I discovered the joy of chords, the power of dynamics, the beauty of a perfectly held note. The dust motes, they still danced, but now, they danced to my music. There were recitals, of course. Oh, the recitals. The terror of walking onto the stage, the blinding lights, the sea of faces. My first recital, I almost forgot everything I'd learned. My hands trembled, my knees shook, I could feel my heart hammering against my ribs. I swear, I saw the piano keys blur. But then, I took a deep breath, closed my eyes for a second, and thought of Nana Rose, of the dust motes dancing in the golden light, and I started to play. It wasn't perfect, not by a long shot. I stumbled a few times, missed a note or two, but I played. And when I finished, and the applause washed over me, a wave of warmth and pride, I knew this was something I loved. Years passed. Nana Rose got older, her fingers becoming a little stiffer, her playing a little slower. But she never stopped playing, and neither did I. The piano became my confidant, my refuge, my joy. It was there for me through triumphs and heartbreaks, through laughter and tears. It was the constant in a world of change. Nana Rose isn't with us anymore, but every time I sit down at the piano, I feel her presence. I see the dust motes dancing in the sunlight. I hear her warm chuckle. I feel her hand, cool and smooth, guiding mine. And I play. I play for her, I play for myself, I play for the sheer joy of it. And you know what? Sometimes, just sometimes, when the light is just right, and the music is flowing, I swear I can see Nana Rose, sitting beside me, smiling that knowing smile. So, yeah, that's my piano story. A story of dust motes, a battered old upright, and the enduring power of love and music. Now, whose turn is it to share? Another cuppa? Hey everyone, thank you so much for hanging out with me and watching this video. I really appreciate you staying connected and learning alongside me. If you enjoyed it and want to keep up with our daily English speaking and listening practice, I'd love it if you would follow, like, subscribe, and share this with anyone who might find it helpful. You know, before we go, it made me wonder, what movie or series are you planning to binge next? It's always so lovely to hear what everyone is thinking about, and sharing your plans is a great way to practice writing in English too. It helps us all connect and discover new things. See you tomorrow, and remember to take care, stay consistent, and keep practicing.